Hi, this is Ann Babson again. Um, as you begin your work in the class, I want to talk to you about how I am evaluating your work and what things weigh within the class. Rather than give you several giant events in the class, like exams or massive long papers, I decided that the best way to ensure your ability to start thinking about literature in an analytical fashion would be for me to give you a fairly large number of small assignments in a discussion forum with your classmates, and to have you write 2 paragraphs each for them, quoting and citing works in MLA format. You learned this in English 102. Please email me if you have zero idea what I'm talking about when I say parenthetical in-text citations in MLA format. I think you can do this based on your previous work in English classes in the 100 level. But for each assignment where you read something, I ask you a question for a discussion. And I'm really not looking for you to give the work a thumbs up or thumbs down, or to use phrases like, that sure got my attention in that section. I'm not interested in your approval or not. And indeed, I'm not interested in my own approval of these works as I approach them, though you will certainly hear a lot of enthusiasm from me in the videos. I've assigned you works that I think are not just intellectually important, but on the whole, very valuable to you, just as the pleasure of how beautiful so many of these works are. But I wouldn't write for an English class, or indeed for a paper I would present to other English professors, a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of a discussion. What I'm asking you to do is to think about these readings in the context of the question I've asked you. Usually I'm asking you to think about either another writer's work and to compare and contrast what they're up to, or an idea that was prevalent in the day that the work was written, that may inform your understanding of what the author was writing, not just about, but why the author chose this as the subject. And you'll see that each of the questions vary. I have a lot of these forums. There are 3 of them where you don't quote and cite works. The very, very first one, where you introduce yourself to the students in the class. You say hi back to them as well. You don't need to write something formally. I also, for the 2 exam review forums, you're just asking me questions before the midterm or the final. So you don't have to write back to other students. But in all the other cases, I want you to respond to each other's ideas. We don't sit in a brick and mortar classroom together where you would be possibly raising your hand and laughing at a joke that somebody else told, or you would not have the benefit on the internet of the conversation between students with the professor if I didn't set it up online in some way. And this is the way I've chosen. You'll write something relatively formal. 2 paragraphs. I remind you that a paragraph at its shortest length should be no fewer than 3 sentences. So, and many paragraphs are far longer. In response to my question, quoting and citing in MLA format the text. Each of these short assignments, and then afterwards, you will then respond to at least 2 other students in the next day, about the things that other students have said on the same topic. Each of these forum discussions is worth just under 2% of your grade. There are 21 or 22 of them. I'm not quite recalling off the top of my head. It adds up to just shy of 2% of your grade each time. So each one is not worth a lot, but the collective is 40% of your grade. That's almost half your grade in the whole class. The reason I set this up this way is because I know that just like I wouldn't expect somebody who's trying to learn a physical discipline, like you're a gymnast, I'm not going to ask you to simply wait until several big gymnastic meets to try the triple somersault off the balance beam. It makes sense to practice and to train and to consider ideas. And each of the forms where you have to analyze literature will help you for the bigger assignments, like your first paper and your second paper. They're short essays, 3 pages, typed double-space in MLA format. No need for outside research. But you will need to quote and cite the works in question and give me a works cited page as a 4th page, which will probably just be your textbook or other additional works that you have read within that. You're free to do additional research, but I don't require it and don't honestly think it gets to the heart of the matter for you to go beyond the scope of, in this particular class, of the works that you've been assigned to read already. Each of those essays is worth 10%. You have 2 of them, so 20%. And then the remaining 40% of the class is devoted to your midterm and your final exams. And in those exams, I tend to ask overarching questions, like a single essay where I ask you to examine a lot of stuff that we've read, a lot of it, in light of a concern in either American politics at the time, American cultural identity, or how different writers evolve an art form by each contributing something. One of the things that you will see over and over again in all of the assignments is the idea of an evolutionary pattern of literature going away from other cultures to a certain extent towards something that could be truly called American literature. When the first people got here, they didn't have a United States of America to write for, nor do we know if they necessarily would have wanted one. And American culture had not been formed. The First Nations, of course, that precede colonialization, had a thousands of year old tradition. That's the first thing we read. And I'll ask you to consider the traditions within the folklore of Native American peoples as a narrative tool. And there will be an opportunity to see how this relates to some of the things that happen later in the course. The first Europeans that arrived here were thinking of themselves as Europeans. There had been no revolution. And if you wanted to be a very impressive writer, well, my goodness, you'd write like the best writers over there on the other side of the Atlantic. But over time, we develop an American voice. I would submit to you that American culture is born here out of the combination of all of us, of all of our national identities, those of us whose ancestors were kidnapped from Africa, those of us who have ancestors across the land bridge into the Americas from Asia, those who took a boat from another place, those ancestors, all of them brought a tradition. And eventually these things find a sort of culinary fusion, if you will, and become something of an American voice. And some of the things that you'll see are that they go increasingly away from some of the formal ideas of literature in Europe and who gets to be a hero in a book. Ideas that date back to the ancient Greek era in Europe are largely rejected by the Democratic Republic of the United States of America and its writers. I happen to love that about this country. I think that you'll see that you're looking at an overarching goal of understanding both each individual work analytically and also the ability to see how one thing leads to another in the way that we make American words go together. How our literature is formed out of many paths, almost like rivulets running into the tributary of as tributaries to the Mississippi, and then having a great river. I think that is a bit of how things work in our literature. It won't be my last reference to the Mississippi River in the class either. um, Obviously, if you have questions, you will have my contact information, and I urge you to email me. I take about 24 hours to respond to most emails. Over the weekend, it may be a bit longer. But I desire to help you do well in this class. And I give you in the syllabus some other ideas of how to do well. I look forward to working with you, and I wish you the best of success.